Hello everybody, this is ManuS and welcome back to the MTG Arena set review for the next part of the War of the Spark cards. Today with the first half of the red cards. A little later than the last couple days, sorry about that, but we'll keep it up for the next days till we're through the set. Okay, so before we get started with the first half of the red cards, you know the drill. Hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification icon to not miss out on the rest of the series, and please consider whitelisting YouTube on your ad block. And now on to the red cards. Okay, first we have Invader, limited only card. It's a 3-mana 2/2. As long as it's your turn, it has first strike, and you can sacrifice another creature to give it +2/+0. So all in all, a decent 3-drop. The more aggressive your deck is, the better it is. Having some small amass cards to fuel it is also nice. There are a couple of like amass 1 cards in black and red that come to mind here. So yeah, all in all, a pretty decent 3-drop, but only if you're aggressive enough, because otherwise a 2/2 for 3 is pretty weak on turn 3. Next we have Blind Blast, another limited only card. For 3 mana you deal 1 damage to target creature. That creature can't block this turn, draw a card. So yeah, it helps you kill small stuff, finish off bigger stuff in combat, or just push through damage and prevent blocking. So it's fairly flexible. It's a bit expensive, but it replaces itself, so that is nice. Seems like an okay card, a decent card as at least like a one-off. Probably don't want multiples of these because of how clunky and situational it is, unless your opponent has a lot of targets that just outright die to it. But there's a bunch of amass 1, for example, that you can kill for free with this and stuff like that. Next we have Bolt Band. For 4 mana instant, you change the target of target spell or ability with a single target, and if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, it costs 3 less to cast, so it basically has ferocious. Yeah, seems like an interesting card, a bit situational and limited, but if you have a lot of cards that make it cheaper, it seems decent. Like redirecting a removal spell is really powerful. So it depends a bit on the opponent's deck, so it might be a bit better in the sideboard than in the main deck in Limited. In Constructed, I doubt it's going to be particularly playable, but it's something to keep in mind for sideboards against a lot of good targets, especially in a deck like, for example, Gruul, where you have a lot of big units to make this cost 1, because if it costs 1, it's actually quite nice. You can also use it to counter cards like Absorb and stuff. So yeah, has some potential implications in Constructed. Next we have Bond of Passion. It's a 6 mana threaten effect, and in addition you deal 2 damage to any other target. So that means also to players and also to planeswalkers, if I understand that correctly, which is pretty decent, so you just kind of wipe a bunch of small stuff. Seems like an okay card. It's a bit expensive for what it does still, since both parts are kind of conditional, and having both parts be good enough to make the 6 mana and the card worth it isn't that easy, but it seems like an interesting card to at least mess around with as like a top end in an aggressive deck. But not sure how good it's gonna be. It might actually end up being not quite good enough to make it in most decks. Also clearly not Constructed playable. Then we have Burning Prophet. Pretty decent 2-drop. We had a similar 2-drop in Guilds of Ravnica, but that one had Trample and didn't scry 1, and I happily trade scry 1 here for the Trample on the old one. Plus this also triggers off any non-creature spell, which is also a lot better. So if you play a Planeswalker, you also turn this into a 2/3 and scry 1, especially with a lot of 3 mana uncommon Planeswalkers. This is quite nice and a lot better than the version we had in Guild of Ravnica. So this seems like a pretty solid, even more than solid 2-drop in Limited, I think. So yeah, pretty nice card. Next we have Chain Whip Cyclops. 5 mana 4/4, and for 4 mana target creature can't block this turn. Nothing exciting, nothing too special, but seems like a solid 5-drop for more aggressive decks to kind of like push through the last damage and impair the opponent before they can stabilize. Next we have Chandra, Fire Artisan. 4 mana for loyalty. Whenever one or more loyalty counters are removed from Chandra, she deals that much damage to target opponent or planeswalker. For +1, you exile the top card of your library, and you may play it this turn. So you just kind of get to sort of draw a card for +1, but not the turn you play it, usually, because, at least this one, unlike the old one that did something similar, I think it was Firebrand. You can also play lands with this, so if you play her on like turn 5, plus her and have a land on top that you exile, you get card advantage the turn you play it, but especially on turn 4 you just can't get any extra card out of it. And she doesn't protect herself, so that's a bit problematic, and then she doesn't have a minus ability, she only basically has an ultimate, and that's just exiling the top 7 cards, so it's basically just like the same as the +1, but 7 times in a row for -7. So all in all, I think she actually doesn't look that great. Like, she's okay. I mean, she generates card advantage, so if you can protect her, she can win games. But she's actually, for like a rare planeswalker, a bit underwhelming. You still usually play her, of course, but I can totally see taking better cards over her first pick, possibly. Could be wrong here, but I think she just doesn't seem that great, given that she has no board impact, doesn't protect herself, and the ability doesn't do anything the turn you play her either. In Constructed, we'll see. I think we right now have better options with cards like Experimental Frenzy and stuff, and her being quite the one-trick pony, I don't see her making it to Constructed for now. Maybe in the long run she will be at least a sideboard card, if there are no better options anymore to generate card advantage and grind, but with cards like Vivian in green-red decks, for example, that would want something like that, or Experimental Frenzy in mono-red, I just don't really see this making it. It's arguably worse than the 4-mana Domri from Allegiance, and that card isn't that great either. Then we have Chandra's Pyro Helix. It's basically just fire without the ice half. It's an instant, deals 2 damage divided as you choose among 1 or 2 targets. Pretty solid card. Nothing too exciting. Decent flexibility and limited. Okay removal, but not outstanding, so a solid pick, kind of on a similar level as the Mark in Allegiance, the 2-mana deal 2 in exile. This at least can deal damage to players to finish them, deal damage to planeswalkers, or like sometimes get the 2-for-1 blowout if you're really lucky. So a bit better than that, but not a whole lot. Might make it into like some sideboards in fringe corner cases, especially once dual shot rotates out. But yeah, we probably just want Fiery Cannonade usually in decks that would want this in the sideboard over Pyro Helix, but once Cannonade is gone, we'll see and re-evaluate. Then we have Chandlers Triumph, deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker for 2-mana instant, and if you have a Chandra, it deals 5 damage instead. So yeah, in limited, pretty good removal. In Constructed, probably too bad, too often, especially with what else we have in Standard for now. But yeah, in limited, this seems like a pretty high pick. There's a common that's arguably a bit better. It deals 3 to a creature and scries 1. Dealing 3 to a planeswalker is nice. The Chandra part doesn't come up that much. I think there is only a rare Chandra, so yeah, not that relevant here. So mostly it's like, unless you really can finish a planeswalker with this, it's a worse version of the common deal 3 scry 1 that we'll see in the second half. And then we have Cyclops Electromancer, kind of poor man's Flametongue Kavu, but still pretty good, especially in limited. 5 mana 4/2. When it enters the battlefield, it deals X damage to target creature and opponent controls, where X is equal to your instants and sorceries in your graveyard. So pretty straightforward. Put enough instants and sorceries in your deck, especially in, say, blue-red. Play Electromancer, kill something, profit. Very strong uncommon in limited. One of the premium uncommons in red, I would say, at least in the right deck. But yeah, not constructed, playable. And we have Demolish. Pretty unplayable in limited and constructed, not much to say here. Then we have Devouring Hellion. It's a 3 mana 2/2, and when it enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice any number of creatures and or planeswalkers, and then it enters the battlefield with twice as many +1/+1 counters on it. So usually if you have something like kinda useless to throw away, turning this into a 3 mana 4/4 is pretty strong. Like for example, there's the 2 mana 1/2 that amasses 1. Then you follow it up with this. You can make this like a 4/4, even a 6/6 at a pretty good rate, especially against, say, a color combination that can't deal with this very well. But it's kind of situational and a bit high risk, so not sure how good it is. It's certainly playable in Limited, I think. I'm just not sure how good it is, and if it is more like a decent filler or actually a fairly good creature. We'll have to see how Limited plays out there. Not a constructed card though. Now we have Dread Horde Arcanist. This card's pretty sweet for constructed. There is a new sort of heroic style Boros deck floating around, where this card fits in greatly, among others with Sandwich Sprint, generating quite a bunch of card advantage. 3 toughness is a good baseline for 2-drop. Trample helps get damage in with cards like Sandwich Sprint, but you don't even need to deal damage to get a free spell out of this. So you can basically just kind of keep Sandwich Sprinting on this, for example, or Sandwich Sprint to play something more expensive for free when you attack and so on. So yeah, this is a pretty nice card that looks like it's gonna do some interesting things in Standard. And in Limited, I mean, a 2 mana 1/3 with upside is not terrible, and the upside here is pretty strong, so if you have ways to buff this and cards to replay with this, this can get out of hand quickly. It's a pretty good card, not a spoiler, not a bomb I would say, but a pretty good pick. Then we have Dread Horde Twins, a 4 mana 2/2, amass 2, and zombie tokens you control have trample. A bit underwhelming actually, like getting 2 2/2s for 4, not a great deal. Trample is not that relevant on your zombie army. It's nice to have, but not that valuable. So I think if you don't have a lot of amass, this card is underwhelming and mediocre. If you have a lot of amass, the card's quite good still, because then half of the stats have haste basically, and might make a creature so big that the opponent needs removal to deal with it. So yeah, if you have enough amass, you can gladly swipe that up. If you don't have a lot of amass going on, there are probably a lot better picks to make. Then we have Finale of Promise. You may cast up to 1 target instant card and or up to 1 target sorcery card from your graveyard, each with converted mana cost X or less without paying the mana cost. And if a card would be cast this way, X would be put into your graveyard this turn, exile it instead, and if X is 10 or more, you get to copy each of those spells twice. Yeah, kind of an interesting card actually. Say in a deck with a bunch of burn spells, you could play this for 4 to deal like 5 or 6 damage, but it's pretty conditional and not really something that, say, mono red wants or cares for at the moment. It's kind of an interesting card to keep in the back of your head, but it seems a bit conditional and clunky to be likely to have much of a Standard impact, but I could be wrong there. And in Limited, yeah, I don't know. If you have a lot of good instant and sorceries and they're mostly like high impact, like removal type stuff, then go ahead, put this in your deck, but all in all, this seems like not that great of a finale, especially for Limited, but in general. Next we have Goblin Assailant, just 2 mana, 2/2, and a Goblin. Okay, 2-drop if that's what you need. Then we have Goblin Assault Team, the 4 mana 4/1 haste, basically lightning elemental that kind of is trying to keep up with power creep by putting a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control when it dies. which means this is roughly as good as Lightning Elemental used to be in days past. Not very good, borderline playable as a filler in a very aggressive deck if that's what you need, but not something you would be too happy to put in your deck, honestly. And last but not least for the first half, we have Grim Initiate. It's a 1/1 first strike that amasses 1 when it dies. Not particularly great even in a mass heavy deck, I think, because a 1/1 first strike is just basically a blank, and then you have to like throw it away to get a sort of marginal effect. But this actually seems a bit more interesting and constructed in a way than a limited, for the same reason as say something like Hunted Witness is a better constructed card than a limited card, so keep that in mind. But yeah, for limited I would probably not want to put this in my deck usually. Alright, that's it for the first half of the red cards. Let me know in the comments what you think about my assessment of the cards and of the series so far. Hope you guys are enjoying it. If you do, hit the like button, share it, tell your friends, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification icon to not miss out on the rest of the series. And of course, please support us content creators by whitelisting YouTube on your adblock, or just turning off adblock entirely. That would really help us a lot. That's it again for this time. See you tomorrow with the second half of the red cards. I'm your host ManuS. Bye.